Hello students, I'm Aanchal Sharma, your educator for paper 1. We have been discussing past year questions and their explanations. Today also I have few questions with the explanation for you. So we all know that exam is just right around the corner. So we are here to discuss the questions with you, the last lap. So let us see the first question that I have for you. So I have this list 1 and this list 2. This is the types of learners and here we have the different characteristics, right? So we are here to decide which learner has this following type of characteristics. So we have the poor listeners, aggressive listeners, or you can say the learners, and we have the passive listeners and then the pseudo-intellectual learners. Then we have the options at the other side. The first is scare others. Second is easily agreed with the speakers. Then the third is listen to ideas but no emotions behind. Then the fourth is fidget repeatedly. So what do you think is this kind of learner? And you have to, of course, match it with the other side. So this is basically the question. But before just looking at the answer, let me tell you that the listener and the learners are the two different categories or are the two different things. Because the listener is someone who is very attentive. He is trying to actually put efforts to listen. Then we categorize listening. While hearing can be just hearing a passing comment, right? So there are two different things, and listening is basically more intense than your hearing. Now let us see the answer. So the answer is your D option. That means this one. Let us see from where we can actually match all these things. So we have the poor listeners. The poor listeners is basically someone who keeps on fidgeting. Now these are those kind of listeners who are not attentive. They are not attentive in the classroom and they don't have any zeal and enthusiasm to take part in the class as well. That means A, when the person is trying to fidget repeatedly, this shows that they are a poor listener. They are not listening, they are not attentive in the classroom. Then we have the aggressive listeners. So the word aggressive would tell you that they are the person who will scare others. They are basically very angry. They can ask a lot of questions in between. They are not ready to listen. They are not ready to accept a lot of things. So these are the listeners who scare others. Then we have the passive listeners. So the passive listeners are basically those listeners who can easily agree to anything. If I say that this is a cat and I know this is a bat, but they'll agree to this thing. This kind of a listener is what? This is a passive listener, because with half knowledge also they can decide anything. They follow indoctrination more than teaching. They don't use their own mind. So this is a passive listener. Then we have the pseudo-intellectual. So a pseudo-intellectual is someone who will listen to your ideas. He will listen to the ideas but do not actually pay heed to the emotions behind it. So they will listen to ideas but no emotions behind it, right? So now let us see few other types of listeners. The first is the active listener. These are really good type of listeners because they are actively involved in the conversation. They'll try to take part in the conversation, they'll answer, they'll interact with you. Now they are active and the teacher becomes not only passive but someone who is responding to them, right? So the first type that we have is an active listening. Active listener focus on the speaker's words to understand their own meaning and context. So for them, it is very important to listen and be active in the class. For them, the teacher, whatever she is saying is very important. This type of listener pays actually a close attention to the speaker's body language, their facial expressions, the tone and the voice as well. This means that they will minutely see everything that is happening in the class. For them, all the verbal and the non-verbal aspects of the classroom are very important. They engage with the speaker, they try to participate, they ask meaningful questions and they clarify information. That means what is happening here? They are taking part in the process of probing. They are taking part in question answers. So they are actively involved in everything. Active listening is helpful in a personal relationship as well as in professional setting of goals as well. So this actually builds a good rapport with someone else. When you are actively involved, you will do eye contact with the other person. You try to answer all the questions they are asking, and this will show that you are attentive, and this will create a good rapport, a good image in the mind of the teachers as well and the other person as well. Then we have a critical listener. Now, this is that kind of a listener who won't agree anything that the teacher or the other person is saying. This is the person who will use their own mind actually, because they know that what is right and what is wrong. They'll analyze everything, they'll decode everything. So a critical listener search for all the conflicting messages in order to better understand the world or whatever they have heard. They just want to go with the logical flow. They want to be rational. So they look up for a flawed logic or maybe a missing information, a hidden agenda, or whatever the things that are not making sense. So they are very logical people and they want to actually have answer for everything. So they actually think, right? So this type of listener can be beneficial if you want to gather more facts and to make important decisions. So they are those kind of listeners who will actively participate. Yes, they'll participate. They'll also find faults. They will logically think. They'll rationally think. So an active listener can be someone who can solve a mathematical problem quickly, right? Because they were very attentive. While a critical listener would actually see which is the best method to use actually in that particular formula or in that particular question, so that they can achieve the answer properly. So they are not blindly following the teacher, they are also using their own minds. Then we have the informational listener. Now they are those kind of listeners who love to gather information. The third type of listening is known as the informational listening. In this type of listening, you focus on gathering the data. You focus on very specific topics for your school project or for learning a new skill or for gathering information for the work. You just want to clarify and you want to consolidate all the things that you have learned. Now they are very involved in the class again because they are gathering facts. Not only limited to the classroom, they can gather facts related to whatever they want to do. So here, for these kind of people, the fact is very important. Then we have an empathetic listener. Now we all know that empathy and sympathy and all of these are different things. Now what is sympathy? Sympathy is you are paying heed to someone, you know that that person is in pain. But empathetic means you are putting yourself in the shoes of another person. You know that they are suffering. So a teacher knows that my child cannot do a lot of work. So these children cannot do a lot of work. So she will give limited amount of homework. So this is an empathetic teaching. While when you talk about listening, you know that the teacher is someone who is also a human and can commit a mistake. So this is an empathetic listening. So empathetic listeners are good at understanding others' feelings, especially when the people are actually in a tough communication or they are talking verbally. This type of listener asks questions that focus on the other person's thoughts and emotions to gain insight related to whatever they are talking with the other person. Also related to a specific topic and related to the ideas. Then we have an appreciative listening. Now they are those kind of listeners who will appreciate you. They'll listen to you, they'll respond, they'll nod their heads. This is a very important characteristic trait. So when an appreciative listener is trying to listen to you, they are very interested in the speaker's feelings, thoughts and experiences. Their goal is to create a very positive connection with the listener or with the person who is talking. This type of listening is often very friendly and supportive, and they may share their own personal stories and they try to take part in the discussion as well. So they are very involved in the conversation, they are appreciative and they talk with the personal qualities and they come up with their personal stories as well. So for them, the appreciative listeners are good at seeing the things from the other person's perspective. Also, they support the other person's goal. So rather than just thinking empathetically or thinking in a critical manner or listening in a critical manner or just gaining the data, that is an informational listening, here they are trying to understand the other person as well. So this is an appreciative listening. Now comes the second question. Factors that contribute for effective classroom communication are. So we have first A is the information overload. Then we have use of unfamiliar words. Then we have balanced flow of words, circular flow of messages, and mechanism to access the feedback. So what do you think are important when we are talking about a effective classroom communication? Now, what do you actually mean by effective classroom communication should also be clear. But let us first see the answer. So the answer is D here. That means C, D and E. So C means that there should be a balanced flow of words. Then D, circular flow of messages and mechanism to access the feedback. Now let us discuss each of these options and then see why we decided D as the right answer. So first of all, we have information overload. What do you believe? Do you think that the teacher can come in the class and bombard you with all the facts and then just leave? Will it be a very effective and a good classroom teaching? No, it won't be, because at this point of time, the teacher should do her homework. There should be a pre-planning, planning and a post-planning stage. The teacher should know how to structure the class. It is a helping behavior of a teacher to know what to talk, when to talk and how to deliver the content to the students. She cannot bombard the students with all the knowledge that she has. Yes, teaching is passing of the knowledge, but it is always done in a proper structured manner. So here, what should we know? We should be clear that the information overload will only disrupt the minds of my listeners or my learners. Hence, she has to, or the teacher has to, chop down the data she has to give in smaller units. This is also a maxim of teaching. You always move from smaller to the bigger. Then you always tell them concrete things and then you go to abstract. So whenever you want to tell them a very difficult concept, you start with smaller concepts. While teaching communication, I just cannot come in the class and say that we are going to discuss about the barriers of communication without even telling you what is communication, what all are the elements, models of communication. So this is a step that the teacher has to follow. But if she misses these kind of steps, then it would be bombarding of the knowledge. Hence, it would never be an effective classroom. So A would never be the right option. So wherever you find A, you can strike it out. Then only B is left for you. Let us see B option, the use of unfamiliar words. So whenever I use unfamiliar words or jargons in my class, it will only make my class even more difficult for a child to understand. So what is the role of a teacher? She has to be as lucid and as clear as possible. So the 7 C's and the 4 S are very important in the classroom communication as well. The teacher has to explain you the things in the most easy manner, right? I cannot just come in the class and use jargons right away. So just coming in my class, imagine this is the first day of communication class and I start using the word transactional linear communication without even explaining that there are 3 types of models. Using all these jargons will affect the classroom communication. So use of unfamiliar words will create a lot of trouble. Hence, B will not be the right answer or will not be included in the answer. So you can strike out B and this only leaves you with this option D. Now, this is the best approach as I have been following this approach with you and you can clearly see that you will never go wrong with the elimination formula that we have been using. This means that C, D, E are the right answers. Balanced flow of words are very important. The teacher should know when to talk and how to chop the data in a smaller detail and small packages. So Gestalt law is important. Now, this is again your homework. You have to write it in the comment section. What do you mean by Gestalt law? And write all the maxims of teaching because they are important. You should know the maxims of teaching. Then we have the circular flow of messages. Now, we saw that what is circular flow? It is the interactive communication that is happening. Interactive and transactional are both circular flow of communication. So, the communication can never be linear. If you're doing a linear kind of communication, this means that there is only a lecture mode going on and the teacher and the students are not interacting with each other. But if there is a circular flow of messages, this means that the sender and the decoder are switching places, right? So there is encoding, decoding and decoding, encoding. So this is how you can say that it is a circular flow of messages. Then mechanism to access feedback, it is very important to have feedback. And we all would agree that without a feedback, without evaluation, without talking to the students, you can never come to a particular conclusion. So this leaves us with the option. Now we will be discussing more about classroom communication, because in the communication topic, you tend to find a lot of questions coming from classroom communication. So they are going to mix teaching aptitude and communication and give you statements. They will play with words, use different words. They just want to see your comprehensive skills. So let us discuss about the classroom communication. So the communication is a very excellent example, or a classroom is a very excellent example of a good communication that can happen in a group situation. So whenever we are talking about group communication, then classroom is a very good example, because there are a lot of people there. But it is not mass communication, because I know all of you. I know how many students are there in my class. I can head count and they are all familiar, and it is a homogeneous group, not a heterogeneous group. Mostly the same age group, same thinking process tends to become when you are in the same classroom. So where teachers spend hours communicating with the students and share the information and the knowledge. Classroom communication takes place between a teacher and a learner. So it is a TL process, right? So it is the interaction between the teacher and the learner is what? It is a classroom communication. And among the learners, both formal as well as informal discussions happen. So there is a formal structure that you have to follow when the teacher is teaching you. While when she is just interacting with you, then an informal discussion can also happen. You can just directly talk to the teacher properly. Here, the listening and the messages of the teacher are decoded by the students at the same level, so that they can understand and gain the knowledge out of it. So this is what? This is the TL process. It involves speaking, lecturing, describing, explaining, illustrating on the part of the teacher, as well as engaging when we talk about the students. There are debates, there are dialogues, there are discussions. The learners raise questions and doubts and queries, and this will make the class more effective, and this the teacher has to address in the classroom. So what is happening? There can be discussions, there can be quizzes, there can be probing. Now what is probing? Probing is the teacher would ask you certain questions to make you think even more. This is probing. Bringing out your best side that the teacher does is probing. There will be illustrations that the teacher would use. So many methods of teaching that she will use. There will be speaking, there will be lecturing, there will be describing, there will be explaining. And the best part that the learner or the student can do is getting engaged with the teacher. So they ask questions, they ask queries. This is how the classroom is structured. The strength of this approach lies in facilitating the maximum feedback, warmth and interaction. So when you follow this kind of a structure, raising problems, doubts, queries, then there is a good, amiable relationship between a teacher and a learner. This facilitates maximum feedback and maximum gaining of the knowledge. A teacher has to be a good speaker. At the same time, she has to be very patient and attentive listener when it comes to the learners, right? For the learners as well. So active listening is different from just hearing. You just don't hear when you are actively listening. You participate in the activities as well. And it requires activities such as, your good listening would require activities such as hearing, understanding, etc. At the teaching point of view, you have to hear, you have to judge, you have to think about it. So there are a lot of things involved. You just cannot hear. You have to take active part in whatever is happening in the classroom. Now, this is also a PYQ. You should remember that Cole and Chan are the two persons who started to talk about classroom communication. And as I was telling you, this is a PYQ and they asked the question by the name as well. Who gave this classroom communication model was one question they asked once. So you should know that we have these people who started to talk about the classroom communication. How actually the classroom communication is taking place. Whenever we talk about classroom communication, there are 5 distinct stages. Now, what all are these? First of all, there is formulation of message. Then there is message encoding, your packaging. then you are transmitting, so message transmission, then message decoding and interpretation would also happen. Then you'll understand the message properly, you'll interpret it, then feedback and evaluation. Now, this is not at all different from whatever we have done in the elements of communication. So, first of all, you have a message, you formulate the message, you have a medium, there is encoding done, there is transmission, there is decoding, and then there is feedback. So, this is how the classroom communication is also structured. First of all, there is formulation of messages, there is encoding, and the sender transmits the message. There is a message via using a medium, you will transport it. The receiver would gain something, he would formulate, interpret, and then would decode again whatever they are trying to say. Then there would be transmission. So encoding would again happen, there would be transmission, there would be again a message via a medium that would be delivered to the teacher. So here we have the teacher and then we have the learner here. So this is how the classroom communication is also structured. Now, Schmuck and Schmuck are also the theorists who started to talk and recommended that the teacher is to be aware of the things that are happening in the class and what all can give a negative impact in the classroom. So Schmuck and Schmuck recommended that the teachers be aware of the things which may have a negative impact in the classroom communication, and they should eliminate all these things. The teacher should arrange all the opportunities for the discussions, and there should be feelings involved, attitudes and expectations, so that everything remains good. Not just on the surface, but under the surface as well. She should have a good relationship with the students. And under the classroom communication, this will enable the learners to improve themselves and to benefit themselves in the classroom. They continue to listen at these 4 levels. So the listener will listen at the 4 levels. Now, what are these? Spoken, unspoken messages. So Schmuck and Schmuck said that there are always spoken and unspoken messages. So clear communication requires that spoken and unspoken messages are the same. So you should see the verbal and the non-verbal aspects both. Otherwise, the listeners will be confused and there would be a conflicting communication. So the teacher has to be attentive and all the verbal and the non-verbal communication skills should be in greater sync. Then surface hidden interactions are also there in the classroom. So this comes to the force in competitive classroom where the learners are outspoken about their goals to do well but hide their own ambitions. So it is the role of the teacher to see what all other things that my child are they are hiding from me, or my children are hiding from me. So these are all the things that the teacher should use, and not using negative remarks here. She should actually try to understand the hidden attentions, whatever the children are thinking. Then there is work emotional activities. So communication regarding the curriculum work in the classroom is always influenced by feelings. So about the way the work is done. So the feelings are also very important to be taken care of. If such feelings are not addressed and improved over a period of time, then it would create a negative impact in the classroom. So the learners may become resistant to tell whatever they are feeling. So it is basically the role of the teacher to give an environment that is very cozy, very friendly and very warm, so that the child can come up and tell whatever they are feeling. So she has to be attentive. She can never scum them. She can never demotivate the students in front of their peer group. Now, this is a very important thing that the teacher has to do. These are the few characteristics of a good teacher. This will develop a feeling of empathy, sympathy with the school, and a good work and curriculum could be established. Then there is task maintenance function. So, a good teacher will maintain good communication in the classroom. This will help the group to progress, and this will ensure that all the group members work together. There is a collective effort, a group communication and a group classroom teaching can happen properly, and a positive atmosphere in the class is maintained. So it is imperative for the teacher to maintain a positive atmosphere. Now, what do you mean by classroom discourse? Now, what is discourse? Basically, it is whatever you are talking. So a classroom discourse is the communication between the teacher and the learner. Very simple. So the term classroom discourse refers to the language that or the language that is being used between the teacher and the students to use the communication that is happening within the classroom. Talking or the conversation is the medium which most of the teachers take place so that the study in the classroom can be taken properly, and there are always face-to-face classroom teaching that comes into being. So there should be good communication between the teacher and the learner. Whenever the teacher enters in the class, she should start the class with the icebreaker or with an anecdote. She should give real life examples. She should never scum the students. She should be very attentive. She should be well aware of whatever she is teaching. She should participate with the listener, with the learners, with the listeners, and then she can never scum them. Her role is to motivate them and never to scum them in front of their peer group. So classroom discourse is an interaction between the teacher and the learners, and between the learners and the learners as well. So whatever communication is happening in the class becomes your discourse in the classroom. It is generally a claim to form an isolated discourse, and it's a domain in itself. It is very important to see what is basically the communication that is happening between a teacher and a learner, between two teachers, between two learners. So teachers and the students construct an understanding of their own roles, their own relationships, and their own expectations for their involvement in the classroom. To be successful, the students must develop a communicative competence. So this is important. A communicative competence is important that a child should also understand. They should understand how to talk, how to respond, how to be attentive in the class. That is very important, right? And the role of the teacher is to make the students aware and to include all of them. She can never discriminate between two set of students. Now we have another question, and it is very simple. It's an assertion reason type of question. Giving orders to the students in a classroom in a specific form of communication. Then we have a reason. The manner of order depends upon the cultural background of the students involved. Let me tell you the answer. So the answer is A. This means both your assertion and reason are true, and your reason is very much a correct explanation of A. Let us read the assertion again. Giving orders in a classroom to the students is a very specific form of communication. Yes, it is a discourse itself. Whatever you are doing, either you are telling the child to do something or you are teaching them, whatever the communication is happening, it becomes a discourse. So giving them advice, giving them orders is also a way of telling them a lot of things, teaching them a lot of things. This is a specific type of communication that happens. That means assertion is correct. Now the reason is whatever the manner the teacher is going to use in the classroom should be related to the culture. It should never impact the cultural background of the children or the teacher itself. So the manner of the orders depends upon the cultural background and the set of notions that the child has. So she can never force the child to do something if she knows that the culture or the family background, or you can say the mental intellect of the child is not on the same page as what she is trying to do, right? So this shows that the reason is very much correct and the assertion is also correct. Now we have another question. Removal of communication barriers in a classroom will result in what? If I have no communication barrier in my classroom, what will happen? There will be an effective classroom. So what do we have to see in this question? Pick out all those statements that will tell you that yes, there is an effective classroom. Because what all are barriers? Barriers are hindrances that come in between. These are speed breakers. These are the glitches that would come in between. These are entrophies that would come in between, and it is important to do away with all those barriers that can spoil the communication. It can be semantic, it can be psychological, it can be physical, it can be emotional. So whatever is a type of communication or barrier that is coming in between, as simple as cultural barrier, that has to be eliminated. So the first is clear enunciation of specific instructional behaviors. B, a climate of purposeful student interaction, promotion of personality cult, and the irrelevance of instructive or the illustrative examples. Now, what do you think should be the correct answer? So the answer is A again. A means A and B are the right statements here. Now let us see first of all what is A. That is the clear enunciation of specific instructional behaviors. This means that there should be a clear cut telling of what the teacher wants from the students. This shows that there are specific instructions and good amount of instructions given by the teacher which should be there. If you are giving clear instructions, then the child would also participate well in the class and would be an active listener. That means A would definitely be here. Then we have B, a climate of purposeful student interaction. Now this is what the teacher has to do. She is doing probing, interacting, PYQ sessions, and she is doing MCQ sessions, quizzes. Why? Because she wants you to participate very attentively in the classroom. So a climate, an atmosphere of a good purposeful communication should be there. There should be good interaction between the students and the teacher. That means B would be correct. Now promotion of personality cult. Now personality cult means you are becoming some hero. And this is not the role of a teacher to create a hero in you. So she is not giving you all these negative traits of motivation, but she is trying to make you a group winner, not a hero here. She is making you learn all the cooperative skills, not the person who is rebellious, right? So that means C will be the wrong option. Wherever you find C, you can cut it out. Then we have D, the irrelevance of the illustrative examples. If I'm giving you illustrative examples, yes, there should be anecdotes involved. But if they are irrelevant, if they are not as good as they should be, then all these examples will just backfire whatever the teacher is trying to explain. That means D would not be the correct option again. So we have A and B as the correct option. Now we have another question. In the communication, interpretation of the message depends upon what? How can you say that the interpretation of the message would be correct? Which all things are basically the most important when we talk about a good communication? So the first is the context, then we have the transmission speed, then we have associated noise, then we have channel efficiency. So why do you think that the teacher or the learner, or not only teacher learner, but the two people who are talking or communicating should be on the same page? They should understand what they are talking. If they don't even know what they are talking about, do you think the communication can go further? There will never come a phase where you think that feedback would be there if you not even understand what the teacher is trying to talk or what the other person is trying to talk about. So this means that what will be the correct answer? A would be the correct answer, which means that the context is very important. Now let us start from the bottom. The channel efficiency or the channel you are using. This channel is very important. Yes, because it keeps you on the same page. You know that in the formal structure, you have to use email. If you use a channel or a mode that is inappropriate, it will only create further problems in the communication process wherever you are talking. This means channel is important. But what if you don't even know what to talk about? This means that the channel is not the first thing you start thinking when you start to communicate with someone. So this cannot be the correct option. Then you have the associated noise. There would be noise, but at the beginning you have to think what to talk. Then only you will see how all are these noise impacting it. How can I eliminate? That means this won't be the first thing that you will actually think. Then we have the transmission speed. Yes, the speed is also important. Either it is a synchronous or it is a asynchronous communication. But what are the basic things when I start communicating? The most important thing is the context. If I am saying that I will be on a leave and the other person is thinking that I'm talking about going outside to do something special, this means that we are not on the same page. This means that we will never understand each other. So the most important thing is a good context. You should be on the same page. You should know that what the other person is talking. Even the word communication says you have to make something common. So communication comes from this Latin word communis, which actually means to make things common. So without having anything in common, you can never interact with the other person. Now these were the few questions that I had for you. Okay, we have another. Which of the following is essential in classroom communication? So what all do you think are very important when we talk about classroom communication? Frequent repetition of the message in different ways, avoiding repetition of the message, interpreting the speaker's frequency or interrupting the speaker frequency, avoiding eye contact with the students. Now, what is the most important when we talk about these things in the classroom or in the communication that is happening? So, the right answer is A. A becomes the most important when we are talking in a classroom. So do you think avoiding eye contacts, it is a good approach? If you avoid eye contacts, this means that you have lack of confidence. So it can never be the right answer. Then we have your interruptions when the speaker is speaking, or you can say you are trying to avoid whatever the speaker is saying. This will disrupt the communication. Then avoiding the repetition of message. If you are not again and again repeating or again and again emphasizing in whatever you are saying, then the communication can never be perfect. This means that it is important how many times you have to interpret something or you have to repeat something, and how many times you can do that, in how much manner and in which emphasis you are doing all these things. So the right answer would be the frequent repetition of whatever you are trying to say. What will this thing do? So the frequent repetition of the message in different ways would not only make the class more effective, but this will make the things very clear to the child and they will remember it for the longer period of time. So we discussed about the germane memory, the memory load, and how much you can store in your working memory. So the more the teacher repeats something in the class, the more you will remember those things. The more the things would be clear to you and will stay in your working memory for a longer period of time. So it is important to avoid repetition again and again, but it is important to repeat it in different manners. So repeating it in a different manner will not make my class monotonous, will not impact the structure of my classroom. Also, this will create a good impact on the students. This will help them to focus on the things that are important, and this will help them to learn the things for a longer period of time. So I can say that A is the right answer. Then we have another question. Which of the following factors are important in classroom? Which is the one thing that is very important in my classroom? So a slang, then you have a cynical attitude, then framing, then priming, and then the immediacy. So what do you think is the most important thing when we are talking about the factors that are important in my classroom? So the answer is D, which means C, D and E are the correct options. So C is framing. So whatever I am framing in my classroom, whatever the things I am using to teach you, whatever data I am the data I am providing you are the few things that are very important in a classroom. So that means however I am framing or structuring my classroom will tell you how important this thing is and how you can understand the things properly. So it is important. Then priming is also repeating the words in a proper manner. That is also very important. Then immediacy. So it is important to deal the situations whenever they come in your hand. You cannot just ignore the situations in the classroom. That means immediacy is very important. But do you think cynical attitude is important? Giving attitude to the students or taking their attitude will only create a negative impact in the classroom. That means B cannot be the right answer, and wherever you find B, you can strike it out. Also, using slangs and jargons would only make my teaching process further difficult. So what is it? A should be avoided. Thus, using of slang, using of technical words, using of jargons is something that the teacher avoids in the classroom. So she has to frame and all the things whatever she is teaching, she has to repeat the things properly in the class so that they can be clear to the students and they know how to store them in their working memory. Also, they have to act, the teacher has to act on the different things very quick. She cannot be lazy, she cannot forget different things that are important in the class. So yes, the pre-planning stage is important. but the most important is the planning stage, or you can say the interactive stage, because at this stage the teacher and the students are interacting at that very moment. So it is very important to take the things very seriously. Hence, D is the right answer. Now we come to the end of the lesson, but just to revise, today in this class, what is to be gained out of all these questions? It is important that you know what is classroom communication. So all these questions were somewhat related to the classroom communication and the model of classroom communication. So you should know that this is how the classroom communication happens, and why is classroom communication so important. Without a good communication, there can never be a good effective teaching happening in the classroom. So it is the role of the teacher and the learner to be on the same page, to understand, to participate. It is not only the role of a teacher to teach and to give the best content to the student, but it is also the role of the student to be curious, participative, and be an active, empathetic listener, right? They can be critical listeners, they can be empathetic listeners, they can be very creative in whatever they are doing, but they should not be a passive listener, because a passive listener is someone who's not taking part in the conversation, just sitting at the end, or maybe fidgeting with their phones, or not paying heed to whatever the teacher is saying. So while the teacher will do what? The teacher will formulate, the teacher will encode and then transmit the message via using a medium. So here we have the learner will understand, formulate, decode, interpret the things, and then send it using a particular message. Now, Cole and Chan and Schmuck are the two main theorists that we were talking, and you have to learn the names as well. So, classroom model was discussed by who, and what were the things that Schmuck and Schmuck were saying. So, they knew that there are some negative things coming in between the classroom, and it is the role of the teacher to eliminate them. So, these were the few things that you have to learn, and you should remember in today's classroom, and you should know that this type of communication, the classroom communication, are the topics that the teacher, or you can say the examiner, will talk questions or will ask questions from, because it is a very repetitive topic, right? Thank you so much for participating in this session. Thank you so much for being active listeners. And if you have heard what was the homework, you have to write it in the comment section, right? So thank you so much, and see you soon with another video. Thank you, and keep studying.